Last month, a customer at my restaurant spent 20 minutes screaming at me about how terrible the service was, how incompetent I was, and how I should be fired immediately. She demanded to speak to the manager so she could make sure I never worked in food service again. I stayed completely calm the entire time. I apologized for her experience. I listened to every complaint. I didn't argue or get defensive, and when she was finally done with her rant and demanded, for the third time, to speak to the manager, I pulled out my business card, handed it to her, and said, "I am the owner, and I'm going to need you to leave now." The look on her face was absolutely priceless. So let me tell you the full story of how an entitled customer thought she could bully a server into getting fired, how she escalated a minor issue into a full-blown scene, and how her plan completely backfired when she realized she was screaming at the person who actually owns the place. Because this isn't just about one rude customer. This is about standing up for yourself and your staff when people think they can abuse service workers without consequences. Let me give you some context about my restaurant because it matters for this story. I own a small Italian restaurant in a mid-sized city. It's not a chain, it's an independent family-style place. We've been open for about 8 years now. I started it with money I'd saved from working in restaurants for 15 years before that. The restaurant seats about 60 people. We do lunch and dinner service. Our menu is classic Italian comfort food, nothing too fancy, but everything is made fresh in-house. Homemade pasta, traditional sauces, wood-fired pizza, that kind of thing. We're successful. We have great reviews online. We have regular customers who've been coming since we opened. We're always busy on weekends, and we do a solid dinner rush on weeknights. Now, here's the thing about owning a restaurant. I'm not just the owner who sits in an office counting money. I'm involved in every aspect of the business. I work the floor regularly. I bus tables. I run food. I talk to customers. I train new staff. I don't wear a suit or a name tag that says owner. I wear the same black button-down shirt and apron that all my staff wears. Most customers have no idea I'm the owner unless they're regulars who know me. I like it this way. It keeps me connected to what's actually happening in my restaurant. I hear customer feedback firsthand. I see when my staff needs support. I notice when something isn't working. It also means I occasionally deal with difficult customers who think I'm just a random server they can push around. This woman was one of those customers. It was a Saturday evening around 7 p.m. We were in the middle of our dinner rush. Every table was full. We had a wait list. The kitchen was running smoothly. It was a typical busy Saturday. A woman came in with 3 other people. Let's call her Linda. Linda was probably in her mid-50s, well-dressed, the kind of person who clearly expects a certain level of service wherever she goes. Our host seated them at a 4-top near the window. Nice table. One of our better spots, actually. I was working the floor that night, helping run food and checking on tables. We were short one server because someone had called in sick, so I was picking up extra tables to make sure everything ran smoothly. About 10 minutes after Linda's group sat down, their server, a young woman named Katie who's been with us for about a year, came up to me looking stressed. She said, "Table 12 is being really difficult. The woman there is upset that we don't have a specific wine that's not on our menu, and she's making comments about how unprofessional we are." I said, "Do you want me to go talk to them?" Katie looked relieved. "Would you?" I tried to offer alternatives, but she just shut me down. I said, "No problem. I'll handle it." I walked over to table 12 with a smile. I approached the table and said, "Good evening, folks. I understand there was a question about our wine selection. I'd be happy to help with that." Linda looked at me with this expression of disdain and said, "Finally, someone competent. Your server over there had no idea what she was doing." I kept my smile. I said, "I apologize for any confusion. What wine were you looking for?" She named a very specific, very expensive wine that we absolutely do not carry. It's not even a wine that most restaurants would carry unless they're a high-end steakhouse with a massive wine program. I said, "Unfortunately, we don't have that particular bottle, but I'd be happy to recommend something similar. We have a lovely Barolo that's in a similar profile, or if you prefer something a bit lighter, we have a Chianti Classico that pairs beautifully with our dishes." She scoffed. "I don't want something similar. I want what I asked for. What kind of Italian restaurant doesn't have a proper wine selection?" I stayed calm. I said, "I understand that's frustrating. We focus on wines that pair well with our menu and fit our price point. But I'm confident we can find something you'll enjoy. Can I bring you samples of a couple options?" She waved her hand dismissively. "No, just bring me a bottle of your house red. I'm sure it's mediocre, but at this point I don't have high expectations." I said, "Of course. I'll get that right out for you." I went to the bar, got a bottle of our house red, which is actually a really nice Montepulciano that we get from a great distributor, brought it back, showed her the label, and poured for the table. She didn't even taste it before saying, "This is fine, I guess." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next 45 minutes, Linda found something to complain about with literally everything. The bread wasn't warm enough. I brought fresh hot bread. The appetizer took too long. It had been 12 minutes, which is completely normal, but I apologized anyway. Her pasta was overcooked. I looked at it. It was perfectly al dente, but I offered to remake it. She said no, she'd just eat it, but she wanted me to know it wasn't acceptable. Her friend's pizza was too charred on the bottom. Again, that's literally how wood-fired pizza is supposed to look, but I offered to remake it. They declined, but made sure I knew they were disappointed. Every time I came to check on the table, Linda had a new complaint. And every time, I apologized and tried to fix it. Katie, their original server, was practically hiding in the kitchen at this point because Linda had been so rude to her. Finally, they finished their meal. I brought the check, and that's when things really escalated. Linda looked at the check and her eyes went wide. She said, loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "You're charging me full price, after all the problems we had tonight?" "This is outrageous," I said, keeping my voice calm and quiet. "Ma'am, I'd be happy to discuss any adjustments. What specifically would you like me to address?" She said, "I want this meal comped." The entire meal. The service was terrible, the food was subpar, the whole experience was unacceptable. I shouldn't have to pay for this. I said, "I understand you weren't completely satisfied with everything. I'm happy to take 20% off the bill for the inconvenience." She slammed her hand on the table. 20%? I want the entire meal for free. And I want that incompetent server fired. She ruined our entire evening. People at other tables were starting to stare. I took a deep breath. I said very calmly, "Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but I need you to lower your voice. You're disturbing other guests." She stood up from the table. She was actually shouting now. "I will not lower my voice. This is the worst restaurant experience I've ever had. That server is incompetent. You're incompetent. Everyone here is incompetent." I stayed completely calm. I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm going to need you to sit down or I'll have to ask you to leave." She pointed her finger in my face. "You can't tell me what to do. I'm the customer. The customer is always right. Now get me your manager immediately so I can have you fired." I paused. This was the moment. I could have just continued trying to de-escalate. But honestly, I was done. I pulled out my wallet. From it, I took out one of my business cards. It has my name, the restaurant name, and under my name it says owner and proprietor. I handed it to her and said, "I am the manager and the owner, and I'm telling you that you need to leave my restaurant now." She looked at the card. Her face went from angry red to confused to pale white in about 3 seconds. She stammered, You're the owner?" I said, "Yes. I own this restaurant. I've been serving your table personally all night because you were rude to my staff. And now I'm asking you to leave because you're disrupting my other customers and verbally abusing my employees." She tried to recover. She said, "Well, if you're the owner, then you should know that the service here is terrible. I'm going to leave reviews everywhere. I'm going to tell everyone how awful this place is." I said, "That's your right. But right now, you need to pay your bill and leave. Your meal came to $137. I'm still taking 20% off despite your behavior, so that's $110. Cash or card?" Her friends, who had been sitting there mortified this entire time, were pulling out their wallets trying to end this situation as quickly as possible. One of Linda's friends put a credit card on the table and said quietly, "We're so sorry. Here, just charge this. We'll leave right away." Linda was still standing there, holding my business card, her face now bright red. She said in a much quieter voice, I didn't realize you were the owner. I thought you were just a server who didn't know what he was doing." I said, "I am a server. I also happen to own the restaurant. And I know exactly what I'm doing, which is why I'm asking you to leave after you finish paying." She tried one more angle. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Can we start over?" "I'm sure if we..." I cut her off. "No, you were rude to my staff. You complained about everything despite us trying to accommodate you. You created a scene that disturbed my other guests, and you demanded that I fire an excellent employee who did nothing wrong. You're not welcome back here. Once you pay, please leave and don't come back." Her friend ran the credit card. I processed it quickly, brought back the receipt. They all stood up to leave. As they were walking out, Linda turned back and said, "You're going to regret this. I have connections. I know people. I'm going to make sure everyone knows about this place. I said, feel free. I'm confident in my restaurant and my staff. Have a good evening. They left. The moment the door closed, the entire restaurant burst into applause. I'm not exaggerating. Multiple tables started clapping. A guy at the bar actually stood up and said, "About time someone stood up to one of these entitled jerks." I felt my face turn red, but in a good way. I nodded, smiled, and went back to work. Katie, the server who Linda had been so awful to, came up to me with tears in her eyes. She said, "Thank you so much for defending me." I thought I was going to get fired. I said, "Katie, you did nothing wrong. That woman was looking for things to complain about from the moment she sat down. You handled it professionally and you asked for help when you needed it. That's exactly what you're supposed to do." Katie hugged me. Several other staff members came up and thanked me for backing them up. It was a good moment. As for Linda's threat to leave bad reviews and ruin my restaurant, she tried. The next day, she left a 1-star review on every platform she could find. Google, Yelp, Facebook, TripAdvisor. All of them said basically the same thing. Terrible service, incompetent staff, rude owner, worst experience ever, never go here. But here's the thing about online reviews. Context matters. And other customers who had been in the restaurant that night started leaving their own reviews defending us. One person wrote, "I was there the night this woman is talking about. She was screaming at staff over nothing and got kicked out for making a scene. The owner was incredibly professional and patient with her. She's lying in her review." Another wrote, "This review is fake. I witnessed this woman verbally abusing the servers and creating a disturbance. The owner did the right thing by asking her to leave. This restaurant is excellent and the staff are wonderful. Multiple people backed us up. Linda's bad reviews got flagged on several platforms and either removed or marked as disputed. We actually got more customers in the following weeks because people had heard about that restaurant where the owner kicked out a Karen and wanted to support us. Our Yelp rating went up. Our Google reviews went up. Business actually improved. Here's what I learned from this experience. First, standing up for your employees matters. Katie was ready to just take the abuse because she thought that's what you have to do in customer service. When she saw me defend her, it changed how she viewed her job. She's still with us and she's more confident now because she knows we have her back. Second, the customer is not always right. Sometimes the customer is just plain wrong and needs to be told so. You can do it professionally and calmly, but you don't have to tolerate abuse. Third, there's power in staying calm. I never raised my voice. I never insulted Linda. I just stated facts and set boundaries. That's way more effective than matching someone's energy when they're screaming. And finally, people recognize and appreciate when you stand up to entitled behavior. The applause from the other customers, the supportive reviews, the increase in business, all of that came because people saw someone refusing to tolerate abuse and they wanted to support that. Linda thought she had power because she was the customer, and I was just a server. She learned that day that treating service workers like they're beneath you is a great way to get embarrassed. I hope she learned something. But honestly, I doubt it. People like that rarely do. But at least she's not coming back to my restaurant. And that's a win for everyone.